We thank Hashem. We're able to learn every day. And the schus of our learning should have the base of English immediately. Okay, we're holding now Daf Yudalid Amud Aleph, and we're going to start from Tashma to Rabavo. Ki Ikla Lasri de Rabbi Shua ben Levi. It's in my Gemara, which is the traditional Gemara. It's 4 lines from the 4 lines down from the wide lines. Yeah, we've been discussing. Did Beis Shammai follow their own ruling? And in our case, that would be that a co-wife of a relative is permissible according to Beis Shammai to the Yavam. According to Beis Hillel, according to Beis Hillel, you don't even, not only is she not permissible to the Yavam, but you don't even need chalitza. She's not, there is nothing there. There is no yibam, there's nothing. And Beis Shammai says, no, the mitzvah of yibam applies to the co-wife. Question is, did Beis Shammai follow that ruling? So that's what we're discussing. Now we have Tashma. Did they follow their own ruling? Those were the 2 groups. One of the issues that we brought up was the latest that the Jewish people should not be separate groups. If they would be following their own ruling, and it could be problematic. So what we said yesterday was that, well, if it was 2 different bati dinim that we're saying, that would be fine. The problem is if it would be one bezdin that would be half saying this and half saying that, would be an issue. We also said different places was fine. So now we're saying Tashma de Rabavo ki ikalasi de Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabavo came to the area of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, to the land of Rabbi Shua ben Levi. He's later, I think, than Rabbi Shua ben Levi. He's a student of Rabbi Yochanan, I think. Yeah. They have to be a psak. Yeah. Yeah, let's say they didn't make a psak. It's 50-50. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So it also makes it almost like a non-issue because it would never happen like that. So when Rabavo came to the area of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, so having metaltal shraga. Shraga means a lamp, a candle. Shraga hameir, right? A candle that's burning. So he would move a candle that went out on Shabbos. That means that it was lit on Shabbos, not lit on Shabbos. It was lit Erev Shabbos. It was burning on Shabbos, but then it was extinguished. So are you allowed to move the lamp after the fire went out? That's a machlekes Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda regarding muktzah, the famous machlekes, the whole Masechta Shabbos. There's several machlekes in Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. One of them is regarding muktzah, where Reb Shimon says that you're only not allowed to move a lamp while it's burning, but after it's gone out, it's not a problem. After it's gone out, it's not a problem. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi held like that. And when Rabavo came to the area of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, he would also move the lamps. When he came to the area of Rabbi Yochanan, no, he doesn't move the lamps. All of a sudden, no, it's muktzah. Can't move the candlesticks. Even if the fire went out. The Gemara says, okay, so what are we seeing from this? That there were different areas passing differently. This land passing like this one passing like that. So 1 second. Didn't you already answer this once? You say that in different places it's not a problem to have different opinions. Why are you bringing this up as if this is a problem? We already had the answer for this. It says, no. Here's what we meant. Rabavo heichad avid hachi. Hacha hachi. V'heicha avid hacha hachi. We had a question, how does Rabavo himself follow different halachas? It seems inconsistent. Gemara answers, it's not a problem. Why? Because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Svirle. He really holds that it's mutter. He also Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi that there's no concept of muktzah. Rabbi Shimon is moided to muktzah in certain cases. When you're mamish muktzah, well, while it's burning, you can't move it. But that could be a separate issue. That could be, maybe it will go out. But very select issues, Reb Shimon agrees that there is muktzah. Usually, Reb Shimon holds there's no muktzah. So really, Rabbi Vo holds, Reb Shimon is Reb Shimon Bayachai, the Tana. Rabbi Vo is an Amayra. Really, he follows Reb Shimon, and he's in the land of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Perfect. That's how he holds. He didn't want to mess. Rabbi Yochanan was stricter because of Rabbi Yochanan's honor. He said, over here, I'm not going to move it. The Gemara says, V'ika Shama, but Rabbi Vo has a Shamish. The Shamish is going to see him doing it by Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. He's going to be moving the lamp, and he's going to go to Rabbi Yochanan. He's going to move the lamp also. He says, don't worry about that. The Maidalei Shama, he told the Shamish, don't move the lamp over here. He warned him. Okay. Next case. Tashma. Even though, we quote the Mishnah, even though these forbid and these allow, but Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would still marry from each other. There would be intermarriage between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. If you say that Beis Shammai did not follow their own opinion, that they were careful, like Beis Hillel also, they didn't just do their own thing. That's how they held, theoretically, but practically, no. So then we understand why Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would marry from each other, because practically the halacha was like Beis Hillel. But if Beis Shammai practically followed their own ruling, so why did they not refrain from marrying each other? There's complications there, real complications. Gemara says, maybe you could say Beis Shammai would marry from Beis Hillel the Bnei Chiyuv v'Lavanenu. According to Beis Hillel, what's the worst that could have happened? Beis Hillel holds, let's say there's two brothers, Ruvain and Shimon has a daughter, and her name is Rachel. Ruvain marries Leah, and he also marries his niece Rachel. Now Ruvain passes away. So Shimon, according to Beis Hillel, of course can't do Yibam on his daughter, but according to Beis Hillel, can't do Yibam on Leah either. So there's nothing. So what does Leah do? What does Rachel do? They get married without Yibam or Chalitza, and that's it. There's nothing else to do. There's no Yibam or Chalitza, because the Tsaras Abbas is Muteris. That's Beis Hillel's view. What's Beis Shammai's view? Beis Shammai says that Rachel, Shimon can't marry. Fine. But Leah, Shimon can. You have to do Yibam. If you don't want to do Yibam, do Chalitza. So, according to Beis Shammai, Shimon would marry Leah. Now, Leah is not related to Shimon as his daughter, but she is related to Shimon because it's his brother's wife. Now, Yibam is always the brother's wife. Yeah, but that's when Yibam is permitted. But when Yibam is not permitted, it's the brother's wife. So, according to Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai doing Yibam would be marrying his brother's wife, which is an Issachar. Children from an Issachar are mamzerim. Let's go the other way. According to Beis Hillel, Leah just marries anyone, no Yibam, no Chalitza, nothing. Okay, so she marries some other guy. She marries Avram. Now they have a child. According to Beis Shammai, she wasn't allowed to marry Avram. She had to do Yibam or Chalitza first on Shimon. So she violated the rules of Yibam and she married out. That's an Isser Lav. The child from an Isser Lav is not a mamzer. And as Avram and Leah that got married, it's not a mamzer. She was supposed to do Chalitza. She didn't do Chalitza. So she got married without Chalitza. but that's just the Isser Lav. So they can't marry. She wouldn't be, if they have a child that's a girl, the girl wouldn't be able to marry a Kayan. It would be Pugum to a Kayan. But otherwise, there's no problem. She could marry anyone. She's not a Mamzeres. So the Gemara now says like this: if Beis Shammai would marry from the families of Beis Hillel, what's the worst that's going to happen? Worst that's going to happen is that one of those families was a Tzaras Abbas, Tzaras Erva, and they're marrying the child from a Tzaras. Okay, Chai V'Lavnin. Okay, so Beis Shammai didn't make a big deal. They would marry from Beis Hillel, and they didn't have to ask any questions. Worst comes to worst, it was acceptable to marry anyway. Ella Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai amai nimnu. Why does Beis Hillel marry women from Beis Shammai, from those families? Bnei Chai v'Krisis mamzerim ninu. They weren't allowed to marry. Shimon was not allowed to marry Leah. That's his brother's wife. The children from that, from marrying his sister-in-law, are mamzerim. So maybe Beis Hillel holds that mamzerim don't come from Chai v'Krisis. Big chiddush. So who are mamzerim then? You're limiting it to what? So it says it would only be from Mises Bezdin, only those very close relatives, the sister. It's not true. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that mamzerim come from Chai v'Krisis. So how could Beis Hillel marry from Beis Shammai? It must be that Beis Shammai did not practically follow their own teachings. That's what we're trying to prove. Alav Shmami no layasu. Must be that Beis Shammai never followed their teachings. It was theoretical. Umar says loy. It's not true. Lo ilamasu. Really, Beis Shammai followed the teachings. So how could Beis Hillel marry families from Beis Shammai? It says the Maidele Yufarshe. Beis Shammai would tell Beis Hillel, we noticed you're dating such and such a girl. You should know it's not so pashut. The machlaikas there. Yeah. Okay. Very nice. It's also logical to say this, that Beis Shammai would inform Beis Hillel that you should know that this one is not acceptable to your standards. The Ktani Seifa, because we have another teaching regarding this, Kol Ataris, it's further in the Mishnah, that Kol Ataris v'chol atmei sheyeilu metar ve'elu metamin le'nimnu oisim taris elu al gabe elu. That even though there were machlekes in Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai regarding tumah and tara, but nevertheless they would borrow utensils from each other. How does that work? According to Beis Shammai, maybe it's going to be tar, and Beis Hillel holds that it's tamei, and they're going to borrow utensils. It's problematic. If we would say, we're on top of Yadalit Amid Beis, if we would say that they would inform each other about what the status is of those utensils, they said it's fine. It had I asked the mashkiach, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes they have these things. The kashrus isn't perfect, but the mashkiach is reliable. He goes by a lower standard. You have to go to the mashkiach. He says, you should know that this meat is this, that meat is that. They say, I asked the mashkiach, he told me. So, but if they would not inform each other, okay, there's different girsayos here, how this works. According to the girsa that we have in our Gemara, Beis Shammai is usually lenient about taras. So the Gemara says like this: it works out well why Beis Shammai would borrow kalim from Beis Hillel, because Beis Hillel was strict. Beis Shammai was lenient. There's no problem. It's a higher standard anyway. Ela Beis Hillel mi Beis Shammai lamanimnu, but Beis Hillel that was usually strict about tara. How could they borrow kalim from Beis Shammai that was lenient about tara? Taras to Beis Shammai Beis Hillel tmeis nino. Those utensils are not acceptable. There's no complication here. The other gears is just exactly the opposite. It's exactly the same logic. How could it work one way? One of them doesn't hold to the other one. Elalav the maidilahu. It must be that they informed each other. Aha! They would tell each other what the status was. So let's go back to our case. If they would notice someone from Beis Hillel was dating a girl from the Beis Shammai families, they would inform him if there would be a problem. Shmamina. The Gemara says that it's nice when you bring an example to prove what we're looking for. However, you're proving from Taharas. What are you proving for? From Taharas, you're proving that they would inform, and therefore by the marriages, they would also inform. What stronger proof do you have from Taharas that you didn't have from the marriages itself? It's the same thing. Why do you have to bring a proof from Taharas that Beis Shammai would tell Beis Hillel about the status, the utensils? Obviously they would have to do the same thing over there. Why do you bring this proof? The Gemara says, maybe Beis Shammai would not say anything. However, when there would be a case of Yibum, everyone would hear about it. And they did Yibum on Tzara. Oh my gosh, you heard about this in the such and such a shtibel, the Shammai shtibel. They did Yibum. Shimon did Yibum on Leah. It's everyone knew about it. It was news in town. So really, Beis Shammai would never tell Beis Hillel anything, but Beis Hillel wasn't concerned because they always knew. What would be when it came to Taharas? You would have to actually ask, and Beis Shammai would not inform. It would be complicated. So therefore, from Taharas, it's a raya that no, Beis Shammai actually informed Beis Hillel, and therefore it's a raya by the Tzara also that Beis Shammai would always inform Beis Hillel. Okay, Gufa learned before. Amar Rabbi Lazar says, "Afal pisha nechleku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel b'tzaros, moedim shein mamzel mishisuras erev anashkaras." Rabbi Elazar says, even though Gufa means that it's a statement from Amirayim, and Rabbi Elazar must be Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas. That's usually how it works, right? That's what it seems. Quoted this down here. It's a problem because it's a Tosefta. It's a Tosefta. So the Gufa, this is our second time in Masechta Yevamos, I think, where the Amar Mars and the Gufas are not perfect. Usually, if it's a Tanaic source, it would have told us. It would have told us Amar Mar. Yeah, it's a problem. I'll write to the editor. Okay. You know that there's a possibility here that the academics would say that the Tosefta isn't really the Tosefta. The Tosefta is someone coming into the Gemaras and pulling out brises and putting it into collection and calling it a Tosefta. Yeah, I think there was Zuckermandel was a big scholar. He held that the Tosefta that we have is not really an original collection. He felt that it came from, I think, something like that. If that's the case, then it resolves my issue. But okay, so Rabbi Lazar says that Beis Shammai, and even though Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argued about Tzaros means the co-wife, the rival wife, they held that ein mamzer elam mishi suriyas erev anishkaris. Mamzer is only if there's karis. The Gemara has to analyze what's going on over here. Man moedim. Who was moedim? Moedim means admits. Someone, there's a problem, and someone is admitting to the other one that they'll concede that, okay, we'll accept what you're saying. Who's conceding to who? Beis Shammai leBeis Hillel. What are you telling me? Beis Shammai is agreeing with Beis Hillel that will accept your families. Pshita b'nei chayvin lavin ksher. Beis Hillel is doing nothing wrong. At least that is not creating mamzerim. The biggest problem that can come from Beis Hillel is that the girl won't be mutter to a kayan because the woman is getting married without chalitza. All right. So that you don't have to tell us that you were moida. Ella Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. It must be that Beis Hillel is being moida something, is conceding to Beis Shammai. That what is it conceding to Beis Shammai? Well, that chayvei krisis create mamzerim. But that's exactly what we're talking about. That's their argument. He gufa chayv krisisi. This is what we're dealing with. They're not conceding. That's what they're arguing about. Lo'ilam beishamai lebesil. Really, what we're talking about is that beishamai is conceding to beisilal. Lafuka midir Rabbi Akiva damar yesh mamzer mechayv lavin. Rabbi Akiva held that you can have a mamzer even from chayv lavin. If according to Rabbi Akiva, these marriages of beisilal are going to be creating mamzerim. Beis Shammai is saying that we don't agree to Rabbi Akiva and they're not mamzerim. We'll agree that they're acceptable. Okay, Tashima. Start in a brisa. Even though Beis Shammai and Beisil argued regarding tzaris, that means that Reuven and Shimon married. Reuven is married to Shimon's daughter, and Reuven passes away. That Shimon is if Shimon can do yibam on the tzaras Abbas, on the co-wife, that's a machlekes Beisil Beis Shammai. And the Bachayas, there's also a machlekes Beisil Beis Shammai regarding sisters. This is the case where four brothers. There are four brothers. Two of them married two sisters. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Reuven and Shimon are married to Rachel and Leah, and then Reuven and Shimon pass away. So we learned before that Levi and Yehuda are not allowed to do yibam because it looks like he's doing yibam on achos ishtay. It's really achos zikukasei. When he does yibam on Leah, but he's also supposed to do yibam on Rachel. So it's his wife's sister. No, it's not really, it's a durabanan. But what happens if they're not supposed to do yibam? What they do, I think they would do chalitza instead. But let's say they did yibam. So now there's a machlekes if they're allowed to remain married. They found a rav. Well, actually, this is easy. They don't need a rav. Yibam is they just move in. There's no rav. Okay, it's a cheap wedding. So, you just have to pay for the flowers. So, according to Beis Shammai, they're allowed to stay married. And
there's no declaration or.
Well, rabbinically, there's a maimer.
There is.
They did it. Yeah. So, and Beis Hillel says that they're not allowed to stay married. So that's a machlekes. Then there's another machlekes, beget yashan. We're listing machlekes in Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel here. Machlekes with get yashan is if someone writes a get to divorce his wife, and before he gives it to her, he goes ahead and he lives with her one last time. So there's a problem with that get. So that's a machlekes. Yeah. Suffocation is this. Then there's another issue of suffocation. There's two pshatim in Rashi. What this is referring to. One pshat, it's a doubt if she's married. One pshat is it's a girl that could do maimer. The other pshat is, which Rashi seems to accept, is that there's a person on his deathbed, and he writes a get to his wife, and in the get it says that this is your get if the person writes, if he passes away from this illness, then this will be a get. All right. All of that. So what's happening then is that he's not allowed to live with his wife in the interim before he passes away. And if he does, then what happens to that get? It's going to be the same machlekes as what's coming out now. The next case. Let's take a look at the next case.
So at that point, is she a widow or is she a divorcee?
Well,
he's
still alive.
Which happens first?
Yeah.
No, if he passes,
so which happens? She becomes a divorcee. The get goes back and makes it becomes.
It's retroactive.
Retroactive. But the next case is Megaris Eshiste Valanium and Mepundik. This is if someone divorces his wife, and after the get, they go to a hotel and they stay together in the hotel. So Beis Shammai says, all right, we don't know that there was intimacy in the hotel, but Beis Hillel says, there was. If they were together in the hotel, we know what took place. And Beis Shammai says, no, we don't. And so Beis Shammai, according to Beis Hillel, they need another get. They come back to the rabbi. They ask for a discount on the second get. The second one is, okay. Another machlekes. So that would go back also to the previous case. Also, we see what's going on over here. That Beis Hillel says that they would need another get. Bekesef or b'shava kesef, b'pruta, b'shava pruta. That's another machlekes. Beis Shammai say you have to pay a little bit more to get married. It needs to be a dinar. And was it a dinar or a ma? A dinar. And Beis Hillel says it could be a pruta. Okay. Even a small coin could the value of a small coin was also good. Even though we have all these machlekes in, Beis Shammai did not refrain from marrying women from Beis Hillel, even though we have all these complications. And Beis Shammai. And Beis Hillel didn't refrain from Beis Shammai. This teaches us that they had love and friendship one for another. This fulfills what it says in the verse, that truth and peace they loved. Okay.
It's a shame that people don't feel that way. Many people don't. They have a NIMBY attitude.
What is the word?
NIMBY, NIMBY, stands for not in my
Oh,
backyard. Okay, yeah, I accept you from, but you're not true.
But nevertheless, right.
From birth, you want a son, you this and that. You're not a chassid, you're not a mesnag. Some people are
right.
Unfortunately, too many sons. The
son of
the whole is great.
Yeah. He's saying, I don't know anyone like that. Reb Shimon Aimer, Nimnu hein min avada v'lei nimnu min asafik, that Reb Shimon says it's not so clear. They would actually refrain from definite issues, but from doubtful issues they wouldn't refrain. Now, when it says over here they would refrain from doubtful issues, one from another, Beis Hillel from Beis Shammai, Beis Shammai from Beis Hillel, what we're proving is if Beis Shammai practically followed their own view, we understand what Reb Shimon's saying, that they would refrain. But if Beis Shammai never practiced their own views, it was just theoretical. Amai nimnu. Why would they refrain? This is good proof. Obviously, Beis Shammai was following their own views practically. But the Gemara says, "V'tizbara." Do you really think so? Even if they did follow, I understand why Beis Hillel would refrain from Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel holds that it's a very big issue. Why would Beis Shammai refrain from Beis Hillel? There's nothing wrong. My answer is actually there is one issue. Beis Shammai would refrain from marrying the tzara herself. That's the obvious issue. The one issue that Beis Shammai would have is not the children from the tzara, but the tzara needs chalitza before she's going to marry Avram. Leah was not Shimon's daughter, but the co-wife of Rachel, which is Shimon's daughter. Shimon is either does yibam on Leah or chalitza, and then Leah can go marry Avram. So Avram from the school of Shammai is not going to come over and marry her without chalitza. So what Rav Nachman Yitzchak said, and whatever he was referring to, was that there was an issue with the tzara itself. So over here also Beis Shammai would not marry the tzara itself. Minavad. Ma'ishna minavadi di suru safek nam yisuru. No. This is it. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is possibly underneath or next to Rava. Rav Nachman is above. Yeah. But there's a Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak that's maybe under Rava or on the side of Rava. See that? Kedam Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Okay. Ma'ishna min avadei di yisuru safek nami yisuru. Under Rava. What does it mean that when there was a doubt, they would still marry? It's just a doubt. Well, it's not just a doubt. That could be if it's a problem, it's a problem. What do they say? It's not a problem until it becomes a problem. But when it becomes a problem, it's a big problem. If it turns out that this is the wrong, that this was not a good marriage, there's a real mess, right? Irresolvable if it turns into mamzerim, right? So don't say that they would marry into doubtful cases. What it means is they would marry into cases that there was nothing said about them at all. That's not a doubt. They would assume if there's no issues, there's no issues. No one heard anything, it's fine. What's the reason for that? Because if there would have been an issue, Beis Shammai would have told me something. So now we have clear that Beis Shammai would inform. My Kamashmalan, what is Reb Shimon coming to tell me? That they would inform each other. Hainu Reisha, the Tanakam also said that there was Ava V'Reis, that they would inform. The Gemara says, Kamashmalan, the Kula Reb Shimoni. It's actually telling me that the whole Brisa was all Reb Shimon. Okay, but whatever the case is, it seems from here that Beis Shammai would inform Beis Hillel if there was an issue. Tashema, come listen to Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri says, Hey, how are we going to resolve this issue? What should we do? We have a big machlokes. Every once in a while, we have like one Rav that comes. He's going to resolve all issues. Oh, he's going to bring all the Rabbanim together. Everything's going to get resolved. So I remember someone one time came like to the Rebbe with wants to do this. The Rebbe says, basically, you want to bring Mashiach. I'm ready. Okay. Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri says, how are we going to resolve this? Guys, everyone, let's all agree to one thing. Let's do like Beis Shammai. It says, Havad Mamzer, Divrei Beis Hillel. That's a problem according to Beis Hillel. They're never going to agree to that. It's going to be Mamzer. Nasa Divrei Beis Hillel. So let's go like Beis Hillel. Havlad Pagam LeDivrei Beis Shammai. Still Pagam LeKahuna. Beis Shammai would never agree to that. So Bayav and Esakal and Tzarashi Yocholzus V'lei Mesyavis. So Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri says, look, there is a way out. We'll do Chalitza. I know Beis Hillel doesn't require it, but at least it will resolve the issue. Beis Shammai, don't do any yibums. Just do Chalitza. And Beis Hillel, I know you don't need the Chalitza, but just do it to satisfy Beis Shammai. And we'll resolve the whole issue. Sounds great. He had a great suggestion, but they were not able to gather together to vote on this because the persecution of the time, the oppression, they weren't able to gather and to resolve this issue. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel now says, we shouldn't resolve it anyway. You know why? What about all the women that were already married according to Beis Shammai? What you're saying is that they're going to be mamzerim. They required chalitza, and they didn't do chalitza, and they married according to Beis Shammai. If everyone's going to agree that chalitza was required before Leah marries Avram, if that's the psak that you're going to make, but we have this couple and that couple and that couple that they didn't do that. They didn't do chalitza and they're married, they have children. So if we would just say we're not resolving it, they're following Beis Shammai, so fine. But if you're going to say that even Beis Shammai is agreeing that this is what's going to be done and everyone's agreeing this is the accepted view, then you're messing up all of those people. If we say that Beis Shammai followed their view, now I understand if Beis Shammai actually practiced, then I understand what Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is saying, that you're creating an issue for those people that were already married. If Beis Shammai never practiced what they said theoretically, so then what's Reb Shimon ben Gamliel worried about? This is a clear proof that they actually practiced it. They didn't practice it. What we're talking about is that there was a tzara herself. The Gemara says, and this is what it means. Hani tzaras to Beis Hillel. These tzaras that according to Beis Hillel, not Beis Shammai, the tzaras according to Beis Hillel, In other words, those women that got married without chalitza, because Basil holds Leah doesn't need chalitza. She's the co-wife of Shimon's daughter. Shimon can't do yibum on either of them. So she just got married to Avram. So Beis Shammai, what should we do for Beis Shammai to satisfy Beis Shammai? Lichalzu, you want to do chalitza right now? She's already married to Avram. Mimasia Gavrayo. The husbands are going to be disgusted. Oh, my wife, she had to go do chalitza. It doesn't mean because she had to spit. Doesn't mean because it means that he was married to someone that was forbidden the whole time. It's going to feel very uncomfortable. Where it says, if we want to say, well, so what? I'm sorry, sometimes there's sacrifices. This is what we got to do. It says, no, it's not true. No, we don't do that. We don't want that this couple is going to have problems now. Even though there's halachic issues here that we're trying to, world issues that we're trying to resolve, but it's going to mess up this individual couple. We're not going to do that. Yeah, this is incredible Gemara. It's unbelievable. Shalom bayis versus shalom in the world versus tikkun olam. Yeah, this is the answer to recycling. No, I'm kidding.
Now I understand. In 1950, when Chief Rabbi's famous solution was really just the continuation of this discussion.
What was the regarding the people that passed away in the Holocaust?
No. Rabbi Herzog and Albion, they decided that henceforth the one who was going to be the only Felicia was
Oh.
1950.
Uh-huh.
Solving this problem that is right here doesn't get resolved.
If they would do chalitza.
Their discussion was this doesn't work anymore because all kinds of Jews are coming to Israel. Sephardim and Ashkenazi were intermarrying. We have different customs.
So the same issue that came up here came up then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Very interesting.
Tell us that once or two, they come to Rabbi Yosef.
Nobody asked me. Nobody asked me. And we're Sephardim.
Oh, yeah.
It's a 2-page book on Yevamos. Page 1, chapter 1, Chalitza. Chapter 2, nobody asked me. We go back to chapter 1.
They do have these books, like these medical books for the layman, like what to do when you're expecting, whatever. Basically, the whole book is Ask Your Doctor. That's the whole book. Ask Your Doctor. It's like 400 pages. Okay, so Tashima. So that's what you're saying. The whole Yevamos, just do chalitza and just resolve everything. So Tashima, the Amar Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon says, "Tiavni masay tavi tzaras abas liyadi v'asena." Tarfon seems like quite an interesting fellow. He says, I'm yearning when apparently he's a follower of Beis Shammai. I'm yearning. Yeah, it's surprising that he would say something like this. It's not such a great situation. I'm yearning. When will the Tzaras Abbas, his daughter, I assume, his daughter married his brother. And he said, well, if he would die, then I could do Yibam on the co-wife, like Beis Shammai says. So Gemara says, whoa, that's a problem. If you want to say that Beis Shammai doesn't follow their view, you hear what's going on.
Definitely, he would keep him on his daughter.
No, on his daughter's co-wife, on the rival wife. Yeah, which is Beis Shammai's opinion. Yeah, the surprising thing, have a good trip. Surprising thing here is that how could he say that he wants his brother to pass away? Anyway, maybe it's all theoretical, but whatever the case is, Ema v'asiyena. No, he doesn't mean that he's going to practice Beis Shammai's view. What he means is he would marry her. He would have Leah. Rachel is his daughter. Let's say he would have Leah marry someone else according to Beis Hillel without ibam or chalitza, not ve'esena, not I will marry her, va'asiena, I will marry her out. But the Gemara says va'tiavni kamer, but it says I'm yearning. What does that mean? If he wants to do like Beis Hillel, so everyone did like Beis Hillel. What is it? That's what you would do anyways. Beis Hillel was the halacha. So the Gemara says, "Lafukim mit Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri." We're coming to exclude what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri had the solution to resolve world problems. We do chalitza. He was saying, "I don't want to do what Rabbi Yochanan. I want to do different than Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. I want to follow Beis Hillel directly." That's what he was saying. Okay. Tashima. Ma'aser b'biti shel Rabbi Gamliel sh'aiseh nesua la'aba achiv u'meis. Yeah, meis b'lei banim. Yeah, this is a lot of information for us. Usually we don't have all these details in the Bavli. Rabbi Gamliel had a daughter that was married to Rabbi Gamliel's brother, Abba. I didn't know about that. Rabbi Gamliel had a brother, Abba, and was married to Rabbi Gamliel's daughter, to his niece. Abba passed away. The Yibam Rabbi Gamliel es tzarasa. Rabbi Gamliel did Yibam on the co-wife. You follow? This is you hear what's going on. Rabbi Gamliel is a grandson of Hillel. This is no Beis Shammai enthusiast. So B'tizver Rabbi Gamliel mitalmida Beis Shammai. Yeah, I think so.
Well, if you're saying grandson, that's
The grandson or a great grandson. B'tizver Rabbi Gamliel mitalmida Beis Shammai. What are you telling me? Rabbi Gamliel is a follower of Beis Shammai. He does yibam on the co-wife of his daughter. Elashani bitish Rabbi Gamliel the island asavi. No, you're missing one detail that changes the whole story. Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was not developed; she wasn't able to have children. We learned in the Mishnah that if it's not b'makim mitzvah, if yibam was never possible on that daughter, then she's out of the picture, and then all you view is the brother with the other wives, and there's no relationship there. It's only Yibam b'makom mitzvah where the tzara becomes an issue. But Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was an islandess. And that's why he was able to do Yibam. Gemara says, 1 second, Tamidik Tani Seifa. But if you read further in that Brisa, it says, there are others that say that she was an islandess. That means the first opinion said she wasn't. According to the first opinion, how did he do Yibam? Mechlal, the Tanakama several lav islandess on her. The Tanakama must have felt that she wasn't. And Rabbi Gamliel is doing Yibam. That's a Beis Shammai view. So the Gemara answers, Hikerba v'loy hikerba ikabeinayu. The difference between Acherim in the first opinion is, did Abba recognize that Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was an islandess? If he didn't know that she was an islandess, and then he finds out later, then the whole marriage is a mekach tois. So the first opinion held that it was loy hikerba. He didn't realize that she was an islandess.
Who is he that didn't realize?
Abba, the brother of Rabbi Gamliel, when he married his niece. No, Rabbi Gamliel does the yibam on the other one. But in the original marriage, when Abba, which is Rabbi Gamliel's brother, marries Rabbi Gamliel's daughter and another wife, he never realized Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was an islandess. Figured Rabbi Gamliel, it's got to be a good family. So everything's got to be perfect there. Turns out it wasn't so perfect. So it was a mekach tos. So that's why they didn't come in to say, oh, she's an islandess. They had a different heter. It was a mekach tos. You had a machlekes before how the islandess works. Is it because of loy hikerba mekach tos, or the islandess itself exempts it? So anyways, what the Gemara is doing here is we're following another opinion that it was the mekach tos that allows it. Biba Yesema, another pshat could be kanasil b'seif girish, it could be nayu. According to the Tanakama that didn't mention that she was an islandess, we have another view. What happened was Abba had already divorced Rabbi Gamliel's daughter. He divorced his niece before he passed away. Now we have another machlekes. If they were married at the same time, are they considered co-wives? Remember, we had this before. So Achirim says that they are married, but I have a heter because they're an islandess, because she was an islandess, and therefore Gamliel could do yibam on the co-wife because the islandess resolves that issue. The Tanakama held that what resolved the issue was the divorce before he passed away. That resolved the issue. There's an interesting machlokes. If someone makes a tanai in a wedding, says, I'm marrying you on condition, look, I don't know how this is, if there's any blemishes that you have, so we'll do a wedding. And if I find any blemishes, the wedding is absolved. There's no, does that work if there's three ways of doing the wedding? Kesef, shtar, ubiyah. They can give money, can give a document, or they can be intimate. So if he makes a tanai and he gets married with intimacy, do we say that during the intimacy he dropped the whole condition because he was just intimate with her, that you can't have a condition on that, or because the Maisa Bilas Bilas Nus or whatever, he's having intimacy, then that's already because it's his wife. So he dropped the condition. So there's a machlekes about this. If yesh tanai b'biyah, it could be naya. So what happened over here was that the Tanakama would hold that there is a condition. So therefore, the whole marriage doesn't take place. Achirim hold that there's no condition, and so therefore, the marriage took place. So then, how was Rabbi Gamliel allowed to do a yibam on the co-wife? That's because his daughter was an islandess. Okay, Masav Rabbi Masharshia. Masharshia has a question. And we had this Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Akiva picks an esrog. It's in the second year. Problem is that there's a transition between the second year and the third year for Meisers. The second year you do Meiser Sheni. The third year you do Meiser Ani. Now, when is the cutoff point? Tu B'Shvat. Problem is that Rabbi Gamliel picked the esrog on esrog is like a vegetable. The Gemara says that it follows when it's picked instead of when it blossoms. And he picked it on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Now, who holds Rosh Chodesh Shvat as the cutoff point? Beis Shammai. That means that what Rabbi Akiva does now is he follows Beis Hillel and he follows Beis Shammai. He follows Beis Hillel in saying that it was the second year because it wasn't Tu B'Shvat yet. He has to give Meiser Sheni. Follows Beis Shammai that says it's the third year because it's already Rosh Chodesh Shvat. You have to give Meiser Ani. So Echad Kediv Beis Shammai, Vechad Kediv Beis Hillel. Shema Mina Asu. Obviously, Beis Shammai follows their own opinions. I mean, we don't see this by the marriage, but we see it by other things. If they're doing it for other things, they're probably following it for the marriage also. The Gemara answers, no, Rabbi Gamliel wasn't doing that. Rabbi Gamliel gamrei yistapikle v'layadi beisil bechad b'shvaram b'tesver b'shvaram. Rabbi Akiva, I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Rabbi Akiva gamrei yistapikle v'layadi beisil bechad b'shvaram b'tesver b'shvaram. He didn't remember, or he didn't know which opinion held Tu B'Shvat. Was it Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel? That's why he was following both. It's not that he was concerned about Beis Shammai's view. He only followed Beis Hillel. The question was what was Beis Hillel's view? Masav Mar Zutra. So question, Ma'asav Yal Kalas Shel Shammai Yazak and Apichas Esamaziv V'Sicha Gabi Mita B'Shvil Katan Shmamina. So Beis Shammai held that a child that's Eina Tzarech Limai that's Tzarech Limai that still needs the mother's help to go to the bathroom or to feed or all of whatever the cutoff point is when it's considered a child. Beis Shammai held that a child is obligated in sukkah. We don't hold that. We hold that a child can be with the mother inside if it still needs the mother. Only at the age of chinuch, where the child doesn't need the mother. So Beis Shammai actually made a sky roof, a skylight, above the crib of the cradle of the baby, and they put schach on it to follow you see, Beis Shammai is following their own view. The Gemara says, over there wasn't an issue of agudes, of making separate communities, because people will say, well, people have skylights. They wanted extra air. That's a sky roof. We have another story there was a type of mikveh. There was a stone that had a hole in it. It was in Yerushalayim. Mikveh. It did not contain 40 sa, but that's not a problem because the mikveh on the side did contain 40 sa, and it had a hole that went to the mikveh on the side. This was a very popular mikveh. Everyone used it in Yerushalayim. Beishamai held that the hole is not enough. It can't just be that little hole that you can fit your fingers through and turn them. That's considered kishviferes anoid or something. That's not enough. Beishamai held that you needed to break it. So Beishamai sent and they broke it in a way that it was mostly broken, open to the other mikveh. So Beishamai Amrat shetifchas beruba, it has to be broken in majority. But Tanan, and we have a Mishnah here of mikvahs kishviferes anoid. When you join a mikveh, you just need kishviferes anoid, like the tube, the opening of this tube, which was like two fingers that could fit inside and turn back and forth. Shema minasu, you see Beishamai followed their own view. The Gemara says, Hassam, over there, it's not a proof. We'll just say that he was trying to follow, he was trying to just add more water. So it doesn't mean that there's two tyrus. It's not goodness or goodness. Tashima. What time is Shachris?
6:40. Give or take a minute.
We'll do one more piece. Tashima Adam Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok. Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok says, Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok is the son of Rabbi Tzadok, who was the one that fasted for 40 years. He says he was studied Torah by Rabbi Yochanan Harani. Rabbi Yochanan Harani was actually a Beishamai follower. And he saw it was a famine, and he was eating just dry bread. So Basi Veidati Asabi, I went and told my father, look, my teacher, my Malamed, doesn't have what to eat. So Reb Tzadok sends with his son, Reb Elazar, he sends to the tutor, to the teacher, he sends him olives. I brought him. He saw that the olives were wet. Olives are wet. They're mekabel tuma. He says, I don't eat olives. It's his way out. Doesn't want to touch them. There's a halachic shaila. He says, I'm on a diet. Okay. I went back to my father. I told my father he didn't eat it. He says, tell him that it's not a real halachic shaila. You know why? You know how the olives got wet? Not because we wanted them to get wet. They got wet because they were in a basket that was supposed to be draining. The problem is that sediment got stuck in the pores on the bottom, and it didn't. The water didn't get out, so it was against our will that it got wet. And for peiros to get wet, to become susceptible to tumah, it has to be willingly got wet. And this was against our will. Whatever, it got stuffed up. And that if you have olives, Beishamai says you don't have to make a hole, because they hold that the moisture that comes out of olives is not oil, it's just the juice, and it's not machshel kabel tuma anyway. Beisil says you need a hole, because they hold that the moisture that comes out of the olives is considered oil. It has oil in it. You have to put it through a centrifuge to separate the oil, but they hold that it's considered oil. But everyone agrees that if you made a hole and the hole got stuffed up, that it's pure. And even though Rabbi Yochanan Harani was a student of Shammai, he always followed Beis Hillel. Okay. If you say that normally Beis Shammai followed their own views, they actually practiced their views. Hainu Rabuse, this is the chiddush that Rabbi Yochanan Harani didn't. But if you say that they didn't follow the view, then what's the chiddush? Of course. Okay, I guess we'll have to stop over here. So, our conclusion is that obviously they followed their views. They practiced what they said theoretically. They also practiced. Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Rabbi.